everybody, and welcome to a special episode of the Human Echoes podcast. Why is it so special? Well, because I'm here by myself, without the estimable Tony Southcott. We totally evaded him this episode. I told him I wasn't going to like The Boy, and then went to see it by myself, and then really liked it, so he didn't get to see it, because I thought it was going to be dumb. And it wasn't dumb. Okay, so that's why I'm here doing this special episode, doing this review, because I went into this expecting nothing. And the first few batch of reviews was really negative on this movie. And the next few batch of reviews after I got out was even more negative. And so I sat down in the theater to watch The Boy, the new movie about the weird doll, creepy thing that may or may not be coming to life, and supernatural stuff, and creepy old house. You've seen the trailer. I like the trailer, but movie coming out in January, it's a horror movie, it's PG-13, everybody ragging on it. How is this going to be any good? So I sat down in my theater seat and said, all right, let's see what you got. I might pay attention, I might not. I didn't even mean to make that rhyme, but I'm still smarter than you, movie. Yeah. And I stayed that way for maybe the first half of the movie, which is not to say that there's anything bad in the first half, but the first half doesn't exactly blow the doors off. It's sort of your really standard scary things happening in a scary house. The doll is creepy. If you find dolls creepy, you're going to really be freaked out by this movie. And as a caveat, I gotta say, I'm a giant wuss. I don't do well with scares. I get scared. I cover my... if you're behind me in the theater next to me, you'll see me covering my ears when something's about to happen. I'm like, no, they're gonna make the bad noise. No. And I was doing this multiple times in this movie. But I don't know if that's a barometer. I am not the jaded, hard horror fan. As much as I was sitting down saying, all right, so let's see what you got, I'm not the guy who's like, all right, let's see if you can scare me. Because I know you can scare me, all right? Somebody could be standing right behind me right now, and I'd be like, ah! My wife could come into the room from across the room, and I would... So that's not a good barometer, but even so, I really liked where this movie went, because I was not expecting the way the story turned out to be, especially because the negative reviews. I don't want to oversell this. I don't want to tell you this is the next The Shining or even The Babadook, but I really enjoyed this movie. There was a moment that I was not expecting, because you get the standard scares and the doll's creepy and it moves sometimes and how does that work, and all of that happens in the first half of the movie, and it's pretty standard horror fare. But you hit a point at the halfway mark where our protagonist lady realizes that the doll can move, realizes something miraculous is happening, and rather than freak out and run from the house, or stay in the house and be freaked out, she basically says, that is cool! She calls the other guy, who's sort of the other main character of the movie, and says, look at this! And draws the line around him, which I saw in the trailer, but I didn't realize that it was going to recontextualize how we were thinking about the doll, because up until that point, it was this sort of overbearing, menacing presence. What is this thing? And because of her character, because of the way they set her character up, she's a woman who has... This is a little bit of a spoiler, so it's not a giant twist or anything. She has been in an abusive relationship. The boyfriend that she was with had beat her while she was pregnant, and she lost the baby. And the moment in this movie when she realizes that the doll is alive and accepts that, it plays so well into that character, because you've set her up as having these backgrounds and this stuff that she's dealing with, and when you find out that she's lost a child and now she kind of feels like there's something in her life to replace that she has new meaning again, it just was a dynamic shift that I was not expecting. And that once that happened, I was open to whatever the movie was going to do, and I really enjoyed. There was a scene between her and the abusive boyfriend. The abusive boyfriend shows up pretty late in the movie, but he does show back up. And when he shows up, you're thinking, oh no, where's this going? I was in my theater seat saying, what is happening? What is going to happen next? What? He shows up, and their dynamic was so fascinating because you get this interplay between them where he's the abuser and she's the former victim. And in those situations, you always think, well, why doesn't she just leave him? Why would she stay with such an awful person? And you get it in this movie. It doesn't get a lot of play. It's not a long, drawn-out sequence. But the moments between them where he's trying to get her back and switching between charming and menacing and charming and menacing, and you understand, like, oh, wow, these people are manipulative. It's not just that they're mean and that they beat you. They manipulate their victims into believing that this is the best that they can do or this is what they want. And I don't know that I've ever seen anything like that play out in a movie before. And to play out in a horror movie like this, I kind of would have liked to see a little bit more of it, but it really, really worked while it was going on. And there was a lot of interesting themes there too. They keep showing the house is not just with the doll. There are also a lot of stuffed animal heads and statues and things, and they do all these creepy shots of that. And at first I was like, what is up with this? Are you just trying to creep us out with all these shots of animals? But as the movie progressed, I realized there's actually an interesting thematic point there about we hang on to the things that are dead for longer than we should and try to convince ourselves that somehow they're still alive. The animal heads being stuffed and put in lifelike poses. The doll, obviously, being the symbol of their dead son, and all of these statues and things. And we replace the living with the dead if we're not careful. And we let the past live on when the past has died. And I thought that message was really cool too. And I don't want to give away anything about the plot, but once you get to the end and you see how it all plays out, all of the little dominoes that have been set up through the movie, you realize they've all been falling down in an exact specific way, and everything just worked in the plot. That isn't always the strength. If the rest of the movie doesn't work, then that can fall flat. But for me, anyway, because I was enjoying everything else, once all of the pieces fell into place, and I could think back and be like, oh, that's what was going on in that scene. Oh, that was what's happening there. It really just heightened the experience even more for me. And I've read several reviews that complained that this was derivative of other quote-unquote better horror movies. Again, me having really liked this, maybe I'm not the right one to judge. There were, and that's not wrong. There are some moments that you can definitely go and compare to. There's this classic moment in horror. There's this moment from this other movie that came out fairly recently that kind of fits in. But I didn't feel like that it was ripping anything off. There's room in the world for people to do the same good idea more than once. And in my opinion, this did it in a new enough and interesting enough way that it didn't take me out of the movie. The ending of the movie, I will say, is weaker than the lead up to it, because my favorite part was after the first half ended, but before the very ending got there. That for me, because I had locked myself into thinking this was just going to be this one kind of story, and then it shifts. That was the moment that the light bulb clicked on and I realized I didn't know what I was dealing with, and I got very excited. The ending takes a little bit of the wind out of the sails for me. And I'm not going to spoil the ending because I don't want to, and I think you guys should see it, but it wasn't as on point as I would have liked. I don't know what I would have changed, because you do see all the dominoes leading up to that, and you understand that that is where they were going, but it just felt a little bit flat compared to some of the other stuff. That being said, and again, I don't want to oversell this movie, and maybe you won't like it. Statistically, according to Rotten Tomatoes, you've got like a 20% chance of liking this movie. But I really liked this movie, and I wanted to share that. I don't know if it's for anybody else. Feel free to jump in the comments and tell me that I'm crazy and that this movie sucks. but I liked the performances. I thought it was well shot. I liked the way the story unfolded. And once I got over my sort of, what do you got now movie kind of prejudice, I really enjoyed it. I think that if you are a horror fan, there's something in this movie for you. It's not the scariest thing ever, but in the context of a PG-13 movie that is a horror movie, I think it works pretty well. I didn't think it was a flop by any means. I thought it was better than a lot of movies that I've seen that have been rated higher. All personal taste. I'm not trying to tell you what to think, but I would encourage you, if you think you might be interested, to give the movie a shot. Because I know if you're like me, you see the Rotten Tomatoes scores and you're a little bit put off. You think, oh, this is terrible. It must be awful. 20% is where it currently is on Rotten Tomatoes as of this recording. And it's not a 20% for me. It's well above 50. I would rate this at fresh if I was a Rotten Tomatoes type rater. Again, not the greatest horror movie of all time. Probably not going to even be the classic of the year, but just a really solid, good, scary film. I think y'all should watch it. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next episode with our review of Tremors and our interview with the editor-in-chief of Famous Monsters of Filmland, the magazine. So stay tuned for that, folks, and we'll see you next week.